State Representatives Melanie Miller and Riordan McClain. Welcome to Message from the House.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about you as lawmakers first. I'm excited to get into the topic about midwives and legislation that you all are working on in regards to that sector. But first, Rep. Miller, if you could just tell folks a little bit about your district and yourself.
Wonderful. Happy to do so. Thanks for having us on the program. Representative Melanie Miller. I represent the 67th House District, which is all of Ashland County and portion of Medina County. I just kind of a fun fact with my involvement with this bill, in addition to being a state representative, I'm also run a pregnancy care center in Ashland County. So dealing with issues like midwifery care, pregnancy, parenting, helping parents be successful and thrive. We do that on a day-to-day basis within our ministry. So I love moms and babies, love to protect the sanctity of life. And more than anything, I love helping women and men discover their God-given potential, and excited to be able to champion legislation that does helps our families get a good start in life right here in Ohio.
Thank you for sharing that. That is wonderful. And Rep. McClain, how about you?
Absolutely. So I come from Wyandotte County. So I represent District 87, which is Wyandotte County, Crawford County, Morrow County, and most of Marion County. And so we're a very rural district. And so this issue is certainly near and dear to my heart. My wife and I are lucky to have 5 children, and so actually a user of midwife services. So have practical experience in this space from the father perspective. And so it's very important for me to make sure that we have healthy families, that families in Ohio have options, how they want to interact with our healthcare system, and specific to this, how they bring children into the world. And so I think this bill is very important to give families that option, to recognize the practices that are going on throughout the state of Ohio, but specifically to rural Ohio, where maternity care is very different than the urban centers in the state.
That is a great point to bring up as well. So thank you. I want to first go back to the basics. Rep. Miller, we were talking about this a little bit, and just define, what is midwifery. I know that there are several different categories as well that I'm not super familiar with either. So please help myself and our listeners understand a little bit more about it.
That is a really good question. In fact, there are all different types of midwives, but depending on the level of care that they can give based on their experience. And just like Rep. McClain shared, it's so important that families have a variety of different options. Not everybody wants to deliver in a hospital with medication. A lot of families want to have another option and to be able to deliver more holistically, maybe at home, maybe at a birthing center, looking at natural approaches. But actually, in preparation for this interview, I wanted to figure out what exactly is a midwife. If I was going to describe to someone, this is a fun fact if anyone doesn't know this, but what does midwife literally mean? It literally means with woman.
Wonderful.
With woman. So a woman who is with another woman and assisting her giving birth. So midwives existed long before we ever had doctors. This is a natural part of life, childbirth, childbearing, and midwives are uniquely trained to be able to help women during pregnancy, during labor and delivery, and even during the postpartum time frame. Now, you talked about there are a lot of different levels and types of midwives. This is where this gets a little tricky, so I'm going to pull up my handy dandy notes here because I do have a little chart myself. But if you start from the highest level of education and care down to more of the maybe the community and more of the traditional care, I'll just kind of break that down for you. So you have under our Board of Nursing in Ohio, which would be a graduate degree, the highest level is a certified nurse midwife, and then just under that is a certified midwife. And then our bill that we're working on, we're looking at creating a licensed midwife. And so we would be looking at creating an advisory committee that would be under the Ohio Department of Commerce with a licensed midwifery advisory council that would oversee that. And so the next one would be a CPM, a certified professional midwife. And then just under that would be a certified international midwife. And then finally, your lay midwife. So there are about 5 different types of midwives, depending on what type of care a mom would like for her time of welcoming her beautiful child into the world.
So there's a lot, obviously, right? There's a there's
I'm
there's
like,
a lot.
okay.
There's a
That was
lot
well
of
put, though.
it
Well
was.
explained.
Representative Miller did a great job going through the level of midwives, but essentially what our bill does is there are midwives out there that are currently practicing in the state of Ohio, but not to the ability that they've been trained to. And so what this bill really does tries to go in and fill in those gaps where there's a midwife that has not gone through the training and all the technical school to become a certified nurse midwife, but we want to have a licensed process for them to go to the state to have oversight over them, and they can be recognized and practice to the ability that they've been trained to and have the state recognize them. What got me involved originally in this bill's been around for a number of years and different iterations, and that's always been the goal, is to recognize some of those lower levels of midwives that are operating in the state, but are seeking licensure to practice to the full scope of what they can. And so in the original versions of the bill, there's this traditional midwife, the kind of the lowest level, the lowest amount of actual education experience in the field, but I would argue some of the most practical experience in the field. These are the women it's the ancient old apprenticeship model. So these women are studying under a midwife for years before they're operating on their own. There are a couple of different certifications that these women can get. The original versions of this bill actually criminalized those women, and so really got me involved in the bill because the midwife that my wife and I have used would have been a criminal under the first couple versions of the bill. And so I got involved to try to make sure that those midwives were protected in anything that we did, that we can have all the different levels, different layers of scope, and at the end of the day, just give families the opportunity to get the care that they desire. And these practices, like I said, have been going on for human history. Birth is a natural process, and there are certainly ways to go about it outside of the healthcare system, and not to disparage the healthcare system. There's a lot of good work within the OBGYN space as well. But as I mentioned before, Wyandotte County, where I'm from, maternity ward is gone. And many states or many counties throughout the state are considered maternity deserts. And so this bill really gives the opportunity for families to get the care they want, especially in rural settings.
And I will pivot and ask you both, Rep. McClain, obviously you're a father, and I'm sure that you've heard from other families, other fathers about this process and why it's important to expand and XYZ. Rep. Miller, you work with families all the time too. So what is kind of the feedback from this community, the midwifery community, those professionals and families in response to this bill?
Well, I think there's really a need, and I didn't mention either, but my district as well, we do not have any labor and delivery units at our hospitals as well, and many of them are shutting down because either people are maybe not having as many children, or for financial reasons, hospitals are closing those units, and so it's becoming more and more difficult for people to find really good prenatal care, or they have to travel 45 minutes to the closest one, or even farther. So this is why it is so wonderful to have midwives provide a wonderful service. And I'm thrilled to have Rep. McClain involved, because dads are such an important part of the picture and process. And we find that even in the work that I do at our pregnancy center, fathers are the most influential in any type of decision. And it's important that, having dads involved, that we have healthy and strong families. It takes two. But I think it's been an honor to work with Rep. McClain, with his experience, his practical experience as a father and using a midwife. We have many IP meetings to try to get all of the different groups on board and to work through their concerns. So this bill has had many different iterations, if you will. We just reintroduced our bill that we introduced earlier this year, and made some additional updates based on those IP meetings with our community midwives, with our certified nurse practitioner groups, and so forth. So we got everyone in the room talking to each other to make sure they were all on board. And I really feel that we've got a really great bill, Rep. McClain. And another thing to address the rural piece, we have birthing centers in Ohio that are not able to operate at the full extent due to limitations with transfer agreements. So in this new reintroduced version, in the House and the Senate, when we passed the operating budget, the first go around, there was a transfer agreement for hospitals that were within 30 miles of a birthing center to be able to have that transfer agreement. And why that's important is I can tell you right now, you don't want someone to just stop at the emergency room without maybe having that good communication with another medical practice. It's just best practice to be able to have a plan in place, be able to work with that other team member as part of the healthcare team. And so that's been a challenge in Ohio. And I'm excited to see that, our hospitals and so forth are realizing we do need to do something because, once again, Ohio is primarily a rural area, and we do have to address this. We have beautiful birthing centers that are ready to serve, but because of our laws and because certain entities are not willing to sign a transfer agreement, we're hoping to continue that dialogue so that this is an option, especially in rural areas in our state.
Absolutely. I do want to quickly mention it is now House Bill 537.
Correct.
So that is the new number for the bill. Rep. McClain, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Representative Miller stated that very well. I mean, there's a lot that has gone into this bill. It's, as I said, it's come a long way from some of the first introductions of the bill where different midwife groups were not on the same page. And we've worked really with everybody try to overcome all of the obstacles that were in place to try to accommodate everyone's space and sort of allow them to practice to the scope of what they're able to. I think the transfer agreement piece is a big component to this. There's a birthing center here in Columbus that dispatched an article on it last year that they're able to provide care for women who are pregnant, but they're not allowed to deliver the baby at the birthing center because of the transfer agreement. And so you get a contentious relationship many times with birthing centers and hospitals in the requirement to sign the transfer agreement. And as Representative Miller said, many of these cases, if someone tries to have a baby outside of a hospital setting, they're going to end up in the emergency room. So for a county like Wyandotte, if you don't have a birthing center available, if you try to have it at home, and something goes wrong or you can't get to the hospital where you want to have your baby, you're going to end up in the emergency room. And it's best practice to make sure that the hospitals know of a birth being performed locally so they can be prepared and have that relationship between them and the midwife, whoever's delivering the baby at a remote location for those instances that need to be transferred to a more medical scenario. You need to have those things in place. And so we tried to get transfer agreements to be required. So we're kind of forcing that conversation between the midwives and the local hospital setting. So to eliminate some of that friction. But then also we want to see birthing centers spring up and to be able to serve families and specifically women throughout the state of Ohio in urban settings and rural settings, just so people have that choice. And the fatherhood component of this is always important to me. It's one of the passions of my life is making sure that we recognize the importance of fathers in kids' lives, to recognize the importance of being a father to your spouse as she's going through pregnancy. It's important to support the support and care that a father provides. Should never be overlooked. And I think it's if we want healthy outcomes for kids, we need to look at the whole piece of the father and the mother and the inputs that they give the child. So I can tell you from my personal experience with the midwife really engages the father through the whole process. So all of the prenatal meetings, going through making sure both mom and dad know what's going on, what to expect. I mean, my experience with midwives is they become family, become a family friend through the process. It's a very intimate experience. Birth, it's an amazing experience. And to have a midwife there who really cares about you and not only through labor and delivery, but also, the early stages of life. As a new parent, you don't always know best. And so it's always good to have someone who's in the field and knows what to look for. And midwives provide a great service from my experience.
Absolutely. I think it was such an interesting point to bring up these transfer agreements. I want to ask, was that something that was initially even on your radar when you introduced this? Was this a learning component? I mean, I did not even know myself that there had to be that in place. So how was that process?
Well, we talked about we've introduced this bill before, so we've introduced a couple different versions of it last General Assembly and now this General Assembly. We talked about it last General Assembly, but it was we thought that was going to be the kind of the unreachable target. We were like, that would be too controversial. No one's going to agree to that. Now, fast forward to this budget, we were able to get that exact language into the budget.
That's great.
So it was, we were very happy to see that into the budget. So we know there's support for it in the House. We know that it's an issue people care about, and so we've decided to now incorporate it into this version of the bill. And so, yeah, I think it's just something that needs to happen. These agreements, what we've seen in practice, are not going to happen outside of the legislature taking action, and they should. I think both sides to the equation know that they should be happening, but it's just going to take the legislature to force them to get together and say, you need to do this.
That's right. And we've both have visited the birthing centers too in our state, and it's really, if anyone can take a tour of what a birthing center looks like, to even have another option of what, instead of a traditional hospital setting, when we look at birth, it's usually pretty low risk for most people. Almost 80% of births are low risk, and so this can be an option for somebody. But they are absolutely beautiful, and they're like home, and they have all the comforts of home. And people are highly trained that are working in these settings. And so it's just wonderful, again, for women to have options. And it's actually been really fun. I don't know, Rep. McClain, if you know this, but as I've been working through this bill process with Rep. McClain, I've learned more about my roots, about my family. My mother's side of the family is from Hungary. And I learned through this process that my great-grandmother was a midwife.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I did not
And
know
so it's been really fun,
fun
even
fact.
just thinking about, wow, well, who would have thought that her great-granddaughter would be advocating for midwives here in America, in the great state of Ohio. So it's just been really sweet to be a part of this. And it's really been an honor. It's just a great passion to, again, we want Ohio to be one of the most family-friendly states, and we want it to be easy for people to raise children, to have children, to get the care that they need, and that they're healthy, that we've got really high rates of infant mortality and maternal mortality in our state. And I believe by, again, getting people talking, getting midwives involved in pregnancy early on, they're highly trained in, again, as I mentioned earlier, your pregnancy, labor and delivery, and then even your postnatal time. I think this will also help these outcomes in our state. Also, when we look at costs, we didn't even address this yet, but there's a big cost savings using a midwife compared to going to a traditional hospital as well. And so when we're looking at making it more affordable for a family, we've got to make it easier and provide that option for licensure in our state for midwives as well, for that framework.
Would love for you to expand on that too, just the discrepancy between the normal setting and the midwifery setting too.
Yeah, so I mean, labor and delivery has become a very, medical procedure. A lot of implementation of drugs in the process, many times going in, creating a surgery, going in as a C-section, not letting the body naturally have the baby. And so all of that inflates cost. And so there certainly is a cost component to this. Within the current framework, most of the midwife care in the state of Ohio is not covered by insurance. So it's all out of pocket. So when you're really looking at choice for families, the access is not there because most families can't just write a check or pay out of pocket for the care of a midwife. And so we're really trying to expand opportunity for families with a licensure component. The hope is that we can get to a place where insurance, it's a billable expense for insurances. And so the opportunity is there, the demand is there. I think, as we, also as a society, I think people are looking for healthier sort of options and sort of not away from the medical industry, and certainly pharmaceutical industry. But I think when able to, people want an alternative. And so there's certainly a component of that to midwife care, the more holistic care that they provide. They not using drugs in the process, trying to deliver as natural as possible. But there are levels of care that certain midwives can provide above and beyond that. And there is the component of the risk of the pregnancy. So obviously we want to make sure that there are guardrails in place. Safety of the mother and child are both utmost importance. And so the fact of the matter is many pregnancies are low risk and can be delivered naturally. Certainly you have exceptions that need additional medical care, but midwives know that. My midwife has delivered thousands and thousands of babies, and there are signs and there's technology to detect those situations that are higher risk and need to be in a more medical situation. But for those that are not, I think families need and want an opportunity for additional choices.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I also want to talk about the new addition to this bill designating May 5th as Day of the Midwife. Why was that an important one to throw in there as well?
Well, it's Cinco de Mayo. There you go.
I didn't even think about that.
That's how I remember May 5th every year.
That's the opposite of midwives.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah. After maybe.
There you
I
go.
think it's really important that we recognize the significant role that they play in welcoming life into the world. This is, I think it's important that we recognize it in Ohio. It's an international day that is being recognized, and I think it's important that this is a way that we can formally recognize their work and their experience and care, and especially when we can get this bill passed. It's exciting to, again, recognize them as an important part of the healthcare team as well, welcoming life.
Yeah, I think part of it's just recognition, right? So we in doing this bill, we're seeking to recognize them both at a state level with the licensure, but then also just public awareness. I think that we want to promote the wonderful work that midwives do, and we have a lot of days to celebrate a lot of different things, and all of those come back to those are something that should be. Someone down the line at some point wanted that to be known to the public. And so the day of celebrating a day along with other folks internationally is important. So just people take a moment out of the day to think about a midwife. What is a midwife? It may pop up. That notification may pop on your phone, say today's the day of the midwife, and what is a midwife? And just the awareness factor of that.
And I think about it too, as you're describing that, Rep. McClain, it's just a few days before Mother's Day as well. And so that's a great way. We think about May, and it's exciting.
Yes, it's one of my favorite months. Love the month of May. Always getting close to the summer as well. So things are blooming. All right, we've talked about the different types of midwives. We've talked about the licensures, the transfer agreements, even down to the costs and options. I want to ask, is there anything else about the topic or the bill that either of you want to add in before we wrap up?
I think we've covered the crux of the bill, and I mean, we come to this from a lot of different angles. I think I come to it because this is an opportunity for choice, as I've said. We talked about the rural, the maternity care deserts that are out there. So that's 13 of Ohio's 88 counties have been defined as a maternity care desert, and there's a stat out there since 2022. 14 hospital systems have either closed or consolidated their maternity care. And part of that is not as many babies are being born, but especially in smaller counties where the population is lower, like my home county, population of 22,000 people, just not enough babies were being born there to, I guess, suffice the maternity ward. And so we hope that birthing centers can solve some of that problem, that midwives can step in and provide more localized care, so people don't have to travel 25, 30 miles down the road to have a baby. They can get the care in their home community when that's possible. So that's certainly a huge part of this bill for me, is to make sure that my district gets additional care for women and families. But at the end of the day, we see this as an opportunity to recognize and promote and to really increase the impact that midwives have been able to have. People have been having probably the most natural thing that happens in human history is the birth of a child, and that's how humanity continues. We need more babies in this world, and we just want to make sure that families have healthy options to do that.
That's right. And I was just going to second that. We want, by having these options, by recognizing midwives and providing that framework for a licensure, and hopefully making it easier for birthing centers to operate in Ohio, providing those options, hopefully it will encourage more families to have children. Children are truly a beautiful gift from the Lord. And I think that is probably a concern for many people right now, is not having easy options or having to wait a long time to get care. So by expanding those services and care for midwives, I think hopefully more people will be encouraged to have more children in our state. And then we're looking at future leaders here at McClain, right? Looking at future leaders that will stay here and serve. And life is beautiful. So very excited to be able to talk about our bill today. Thank you.
Representatives, thank you so much. Quickly want to talk about social media. You can follow us on the Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House _GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Representative Melanie Miller and Representative Riordan McClain, thank you guys again. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.